And I came up here to St. Vincent's. I think I began majoring in management. I thought, well, I'll be a manager. Second semester was accounting. Third semester was English. And then I sat in on a Chuck Manoli class. And it's the Manoli method. I've been teaching a long time, and I've never been able to replicate it. I think I'm a good teacher. And I think I can teach, I can hold a classroom's interest and an audience interest. But what Chuck was able to do is almost inimitable. He sees education as a continuum, not just what happens in a classroom. And he got all of us reading, but not just reading the course material, not just cramming to study for exams. Guys like Joe and Jim and I, we weren't readers, and all of a sudden we're reading the New Republic, the New York Times Magazine section. This is Renee as well. The book review sections, or going to the, I used to skip classes to go to the library to read books, and I'd skip class because I didn't want anybody to know I was in the library. And that was Chuck Manoli.
And then whenever you're ready, I would just say, talk from your heart and say what it means to you to be getting this honor.
Never afraid to speak his mind. He is an outspoken man. He understands politics. He understands history, of course, and no one perhaps understands Saint Vincent College better than Chuck Manoli.
From the very first beginning, my days here at Saint Vincent, he was certainly one of those iconic figures that had an important influence on my own life as well as on the life of Saint Vincent.
He had been here his whole life, it seemed like to me. He had gone to high school here, he had gone to college here, he had taught in the high school, the prep school, and then he was, when the prep school closed, he came over to the college faculty. So he had been here forever and basically had dedicated his life to St. Vincent.
He is profound. There are students of his who are out there who still speak of him very highly.
He was extremely proud of his students. No matter what they did, whether they went to a graduate school, whether they got a job someplace, law school, working in the community, Chuck was always proud of his students. That was one nice thing I really appreciate and learned from him.
I think the legacy of Chuck Manoli is his love for learning and the many ways in which he continued to love the process of learning in his own life, and I think he was able to communicate that to his students.
He's part of a generation of professors who loved what they did, saw teaching as an interactive process with their students that wasn't ruled by grade books so much and rigid syllabi, but it was a process of inquiry in which they engaged with their students, in which they would discover things together, and Chuck to me epitomizes that generation.
He was very kind and gentle, very interested in human dignity and respecting people as people. And he was able to speak about that event, what it meant for the nation, and also how that impacted his own life. And I think because he had that capacity to share these kinds of things, personal, emotional responses to human tragedy or to human events, that was really a role model for all of us to realize that the feelings that we had were something that it was important for us to be in touch with, and that the range of emotions in the 60s were particularly difficult times for this nation. You had the assassination of Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the man landed on the moon. All of these were tremendous life events, and then certainly during all of this, was the ongoing Vietnam War, which certainly struck him in a very personal way, but also, all young people that were growing up during that particular period. The tragedy of that war, the hundreds of thousands of young Americans and Vietnamese that were killed during that particular period. It was just a tragedy for the world, and I think he was able to raise our own consciousness about the importance for these events, current events, and how we needed to be attentive to them. We don't live
in isolation, from the rest of the world. That these are events that speak to the heart of each one of us, and because he was able to let those events speak to his own heart, I think he became a very wonderful role model for all of his students to let those events speak to their hearts as well.
I came to prep school in 1941, came back to teaching in the prep school in 1958, went into the college in '62, and taught at Saint Vincent till 2005, so I know a little wee bit about Saint Vincent.
One of the things about Chuck Manoli was there was always a inquisitive spirit. I think he embodied that love of learning in his own life, and I think it was a wonderful role model for students too, in terms of being inquisitive, reading. I can recall that every time we went to class, Chuck had another book, some aspect of history that he was reading about.
He'd say, give me a good book to read, and he would go back to his bookshelf and say, well, read this, or read that, or look at the New York Review of Books. Here's something.
It was an interactive process where both the teacher and the student felt a responsibility to the truth, to the subject matter, and so there was a mutual process of discovery and inquiry.
You could always talk to him. He would always be around. You could ask him questions.
We were in the area where time when there were some big changes going on in the faculty. So one of the leaders was Chuck, and Chuck was a great faculty leader.
At faculty meetings, he always would challenge. He always would question. He took faculty governance very, very seriously, and that became sort of a model for me to follow. As some of my colleagues may attest, I tend to be fairly outspoken at faculty meetings. I'm not going to blame that on Chuck, but Chuck always held those in authority responsible, and asked great and tough questions. And I would say that was a slight contrast from the man that I knew personally, was how seriously he took faculty governance, and how the tough questions that he asked at faculty meetings was a real inspiration to me.
I think there are 4 or 5 people that I really, really depended on in the prep school. Edmund Cuneo was one, headmaster, Edmund Cuneo. He was just one of the kindest, nicest people I've ever met. I didn't figure that out while I was in the prep school, but I certainly did later on. Egbert Donovan, he put a terrible premium on telling the truth. And I think I caught that, that I got in the bad habit of telling the truth. And when I was in the college from '62 to '05, I'm pretty sure I upset people, but I didn't detect any reprisals. I certainly didn't get any of that from Egbert Donovan.
In his retirement, he continued to teach at the college. He taught a class each semester, and he donated the money that he was paid for each of those classes into a scholarship fund to fund an undergraduate who has limited means. And so, even at a point where you would think, okay, he's facing retirement, he's got economic concerns and constraints that he probably should be concerned about. He said, I'm going to take whatever money I make from my continued service to the college, and I'm going to give that to a student or to a series of students. So I think he modeled an admirable life, a good citizen, caring individual, committed to others.
Chuck Manoli leaves a legacy. I mean, the students that he taught over the years, felt very strongly that they want to memorialize that legacy in a way that the scholarship can perpetuate not only his memory but also his love of learning, and the scholarships will be designated for those who embody that spirit and that love of learning in their own lives. And which is the goal of a good education. And in a way, I think that's why he really embodies the best of what St. Vincent has to offer, because he himself loved learning, and that's a strong tradition of the Benedictine mission throughout these many, many years. And I can think of no one better that embodies that than Chuck Manoli.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to say,
I think that's fine.
Hmm?
I think that's terrific.